One thing I respect the most about my parents, they were very strict, very strict. They allowed us to fail, but they always caught us if we failed too far, right? And I think in today's world where parents fail is you either are over nurturing and over keeping them in a bubble, you keep them in a bubble too much. My parents allowed us to go experience and get hurt. Hood of my car goes through the windshield, splits my face in half. I have a scar from here all the way through my eye, smacked my skull, broke my skull off. And I had kicked my door open and I'm like, okay, obviously something's wrong. Put my hands on my face, my hands went in my head and I was like, oh, that probably shouldn't be happening.
Today's podcast is with an incredible individual named Roen McCullough. You are going to become impressed with him from the very beginning, and his story is not only going to inspire you, it's going to challenge you. A young man who started off as a long snapper at Kilbourne High School, that ended up propelling him to play for, yes, the Ohio State University. And that experience was a huge one in his life, obviously. Today, he is very, very successful in business, and you're going to see how throughout today's interview, you're going to see how his faith was developed and then how his faith was tested. An accident, a car accident that would normally stop someone ended up propelling him and formulating who he is today in faith and in life. I am so excited for you to hear this interview because I know the impact that he will have on you, just like he had an impact on me. Well, so, I do want to jump in to how things have been recently, but I need to go back.
Yeah.
I need to go back to kind of where all this kind of started. And it probably, I'm just guessing, you tell me, it probably started when you were heading toward the end of high school, moving in the direction of college. Because I look at what's been going on in your life recently, all this other stuff is a foundation to it.
Yep.
Okay. And I may be wrong on that, but I feel like it is.
Yeah.
And so it's like, we need to know that first. So tell me a little bit about your history as high schooler, football player, and then where that went.
That's I could talk about this for the whole 2-hour session. So yeah, I think from a personal and professional sense, in high school, I really started to understand the value of relationships and the value of work ethic. My dad's biggest thing with us is, what value are you adding to the world? And I think that's what's bolstered kind of my whole ideology as I've moved through life. And we'll get into that kind of with my work journey and my friendships and the things that I'm involved in. But the main question for my life is, what value am I adding, right? So being a long snapper in high school, you're not the guy who's going to be making the rah highlight speech. You're not on the highlight video. You're not. You're it's a pretty mundane task, right? So you really have to know when to lead and when to follow, and what value you're actually adding. And a lot of the time, that's academically. And so throughout high school, I think it was emphasized by my parents of, get a strong education. I worked at Waffle House for like 6 years. That showed me the value of an education and the value of working really hard for your money.
Awesome place.
Yeah, it's a great place, phenomenal place. But yeah, coming out of high school, so a little background on myself. My brother played football with me at Ohio State. We were both long snappers. We both went through Chris Rubio. He's the #1 long snapping coach in the country. So during high school, we would go to all of these Rubio camps. We would get ranked. We would go to these college camps and try to win the camps, right, to get noticed and get a potential offer to play in college. So coming out of high school, I had my 5-star ranking. I was second in the country. And I had offers from Cincinnati, Virginia Tech, Georgia, Ohio State, and Toledo. And I was actually getting recruited to Boston College by Al Washington. Al Washington was then, I believe he was a linebacker coach and D-line coach at Boston College. Then when he came to Ohio State, he became our linebackers coach. So full circle moment. I went to Ohio State as a long snapper, but trained like a linebacker. I wanted to add value. I wanted to see what I could, how hard I could push myself. And I just didn't want to be the specialist kicking balls in the corner, not really doing much. So trained really, really hard, trained my butt off. And then senior year, I was blessed with the opportunity. Al Washington came up to me 2 days before the spring game and was like, "Hey, Rowan, we're down at linebacker. Learn the playbook and have at 'em." So I went in the spring game, crushed it, did really, really well. And working, towards camp, trying to be the next strong side linebacker at Ohio State. I had ended up tearing both of my shoulders. And so that was kind of the initial, oh crap, Coach Meyer always used to say, make football what you do, not who you are. And I'm really big into my faith. And I thought I was rooted in God. I thought my identity was fully in Christ. I thought, life was sweet and I was riding the wave. But I was very, very quickly humbled. And I don't think I was a cocky person. I thought, I was obviously very confident in my ability. But reflecting back on that, Matthew 23:12, the verse is, for those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. And I don't think that God was necessarily humbling me because I was exalting myself publicly. But I think in my heart, God knew the position of my heart. And I'm very grateful that he humbled me and took everything away from me. But yeah, so Ohio State, graduated with my degree in finance. I think I had a 3.9 through that. I like to say that I have about 7 or 8 degrees since I put all my teammates through school too. This goes back into adding value. As a long snapper, you're going to help your teammates get through school. So got my degree in finance. Coming out, thought I wanted to be in sales. My dad's in sales, obviously, with Cisco Systems. You know that. My aunt works for an open source software company called Red Hat. And I went from having no technical background to working in a very niche technical space in software. And I hated it. I love relationships, but it just wasn't for me. And I couldn't see the direct value I was adding to the world. So it started this journey of, who am I? Why am I here? What am I doing? And what value am I adding? So was there at Red Hat for probably 6 or 7 months, jumped from there, went to JP Morgan. JP Morgan, I thought that the corporate life wasn't for me. And then I went even more corporate and really, really realized that the corporate life wasn't for me. So I went in there and I just felt like an ant in a colony. It wasn't my shtick. And from there, I really double clicked into, what am I doing with my life? How do I want to live my life? Who am I as a man? And I quit JP Morgan. I didn't have a plan, but I knew that I wanted to, actually play a part in building things. So turned my attention to startups. I like kind of the unstructured environment, the kind of, land and expand, ground game, guerrilla warfare with small teams. I think that's where I thrive. And worked with a company called Carmen Ventures here in town. I then branched off with one of the general partners and co-founded a bioventure studio. And it fell through. There were just some disagreements amongst the general partners. There were some disagreements with our LPs, our investors, and it fell through. And I was left without a job. And I was working on the weekends down at a bar and restaurant down in the Short North. And that's kind of what bolstered my finances. And it really allowed me to take a step back and go, okay, who am I? Why am I here? What kind of man do I want to be? And what value am I adding to the world? So there was a time in my life where I moved out of my parents' house. I ended up being homeless for about a month. I was living out of my car, living out of my Civic, with my dog, taking showers at my gym. And not many people know that. But it was honestly the most peaceful time in my life. I had a storm going on around me, but I think I was the most rooted and closest to God I've ever been. And it's, I hate saying that, because you shouldn't only be close to God in the valleys, right? But in the valleys, that's where the pastures are, right? And I didn't, it goes back to relationships too. I didn't know exactly who I was. I didn't know where my identity was. And all I knew was I just needed to be around a group of brothers. The Bible calls us to have wise counsel. The Bible calls us to have this brotherhood, right? And I knew that that's what I was missing from Ohio State. That's what I was missing from my family. That's what I was missing from my friends. And I just needed a good group of guys. So started my own ministry, and I didn't have any plan for where it was going to go. I didn't know where it was going to go. I didn't, I was listening to a podcast one day, really figuring out, okay, who am I as Roen? I'm a man. Okay. What does it mean to be a man? Okay. I'm not going to go to the world to try to figure out what a man is. I think we all know what the world thinks a man is, and everybody wants to stay away from that. It's the Andrew Tates of the world. It's that kind of stuff. Not who I want to be. So what am I going to turn to? I'm going to turn to the best study book is the Bible, right? So double click into that. I was listening to a podcast called Men in the Arena. He brings on these Christian business leaders, accomplished individuals. And one of the guys he brought on, his name is Chris Harper. Chris Harper founded his own ministry called the Better Man Group. And the Better Man Group walks through biblical masculinity and what it really means to be a man according to the Bible. There's 4 pillars to that. It's courageously following God's word, loving and protecting God's woman, excelling at God's work, and bettering God's world through his children. I like to add a 5th pillar, and that's being physically fit. I think as men, we should take care of ourselves. We have to be fit. So started that ministry about 1.5 years ago, when I was, living out of my car, working on the weekends, and just networking throughout the week, trying to see what was out there. And that ministry ended up being very fruitful. We've grown it to about, I want to say 55 members now. And I reserve it for the top business leaders in Columbus, ex-professional athletes, law enforcement guys who operate at a very high level, who have been in the world, who've been of the world, who realize the world sucks and it hurts to be in and of the world. And that's not who we should be as men. One big thing I struggled with is in the men's groups that I would go to, in the Bible studies that I would go to, I'd walk in there and I'm an open book. I'm a very open book. Hey guys, I've had sex before marriage. I've drank in my life. And they're like, what? And it's just not, it's not the culture you want as a man, as a Christian. I think that's where my group has differentiated itself. And we have people come into the group. It ranges from 18 years old up to, I think, 70 something, 72 or something. And the rhetoric amongst everybody is, this is the best men's group I have ever been to in my entire life. Guys just come in there raw. We meet them where they are. They operate at a high level, and they realize they have a drive to just be a better man. That doesn't just include professionally, but personally as well. So started that ministry, and I was very, very honest. I was going through some relationship struggles. I was going through some just professional struggles. Obviously, I with being an elite operator and not having a job, I was a man without a plan. I was a man without a vision. I had nothing to work on. And I felt like I am not adding value to the world, right? So I started adding value to myself in my own life and just seeing, how can I better myself as a man to be in a better position to add value to other people's lives. And that started personally through that Betterment group, started serving at my church more, just getting out and just changing my perspective on the world. So in that group, 2 members of the group worked at Vessel and the Ohio Angel Collective. The Ohio Angel Collective is an angel investing syndicate. We have a group of members. It's free to join. We do institutional level diligence on deals, toss it over to them, and they can choose to participate in the investments. So they wanted their engagement rate to go up amongst the members. And I looked at them and I said, listen, I want to be in the venture world. I know that it is very hard to be in the venture world, especially in the Midwest, because there's no venture firms in the Midwest hardly. I said, I will work for free. I don't care what it takes. I just want to build relationships. I just want to add value. And if I get paid on the back end, that's great. But that is not my intention. I just want to prove myself. Let's go get my foot in the door. Meeting with our managing partner, who's our whole team's huge in their faith. It's a core value amongst, I think, almost every single one of us, except for one, as we've expanded. But sat with our managing partner, was very frank with him and said, hey, here's where I've messed up in my life. And no one wants to look at your boss or your employer and say that, but I think authenticity has been my shtick my whole life. I'm just going to tell it how it is. And if it is a certain way, it's got to be said that way. Right. And I think people respect that. But yeah, I got with our managing partner and I was like, listen, hey, here's what I did at the venture firm. Here's this I'm struggling with. I'm coming to you as a mentee. I will work for free. I'm not asking for anything. I just want to add value and just have something to add value. And I get a call then 2 weeks later from him saying, hey, how about you come on as my chief of staff? So serving directly beside him, I'm our Swiss Army knife to just get deployed on projects and execute. And that's where that fundraise comes in. And it's been very, very fruitful. And I started to think, life's going up and to the right now. Right. And I went through all of this immense hardship with my family, with my friends, with football, with work, with finances, with everything. And then I'm like, okay, we finally climbed the mountain. We're sitting at the peak. I want to live a boring life. And then the accident happens. And so I think it was 2 months after I started at Vessel that my accident happened. It happened on November 17th of this past year, 4 days after my birthday. I'll give a little background on the accident. So up on 23, there's a tunnel. The expressway. I was going in the expressway. Some guy had chosen to change his tire in the left lane rather than the shoulder for whatever reason that might be. I was driving behind I don't really remember what it was. It was a larger bodied car, and I was in my Civic, coming home from the gym at like 6 p.m. on a Sunday. Driving home was about 30 seconds from my parents' house, and car in front of me swerves out of the way, and I'm like, oh shoot, they're swerving. I should probably swerve. And so I swerved, but I just didn't have time to react. Smack into the back of this car. And then there was a F-350 behind me that was towing, I believe, a tractor or some kind of trailer or something. Smacks in the back of me, crumples my car. Hood of my car goes through the windshield, splits my face in half. I have a scar from here all the way through my eye, smacked my skull, broke my skull off. And I had kicked my door open and I'm like, okay, obviously something's wrong. Put my hands in my face. My hands went in my head. And I was like, oh, that probably shouldn't be happening. And I thought I had blood in my eye or something. So I kept wiping my eye. Turns out I didn't have an eye anymore. Didn't know that at the time. But I bent forward, had all this blood come out, looked at somebody, told them to call. And this is where I think the football Rowan came in, that just, everything's on fire. There needs to be someone with a plan. So looked at somebody, I said, hey, you're going to call Ohio State. You're going to call the ambulance. We're going to Ohio State. I'm not going to Grant. I'm not going to Grant. I'm not going to Riverside. I have connections at Ohio State. So we're going to Ohio State. Told someone to call my mom. And at the time, my mom and I kind of had a strained relationship, as, the natural leaving the house, becoming your own man, and your parents have turned from your coach to your cheerleader to now at the stage of life, I need them to be my consultant, in a sense, or advisor now, I should say.
Right on.
That's the correct term. But it's that healthy journey out of the grips of your parents, right? And so we had a strained relationship, and she was the first person that I thought to call. I got on the phone with her and I said, hey, and I was bleeding profusely. I mean, my face was hanging down. It was bad. And called her. I said, hey, I think I'm going to die. I just got into a car accident. I split my face in half. And I told her, I said, listen, I love you. And thank you for being my mom. And I gave the phone back to whoever's it was, went to this other car who I saw had a baby in the back seat. And I said, hey, do you guys have any diapers that I can use to hold on my face? Bled through 3 diapers. And then I had to wait about 15 minutes. I think it was 13 minutes for the ambulance to come, and got on my knees, looked up at all the headlights on 23. I was the guy, I kind of felt bad. I was the guy that was holding up traffic. That's what I was thinking in the moment for a second. I was like, damn, I'm that guy. And got on my knees. And I didn't ask God to save me. I didn't plead to God. I came very close face to face with death. Right. And I just felt so at peace. And it took every question I've ever had in my faith away. When people are like, why do you believe in God? I don't know how necessarily to put it into words, other than in that moment, I had extreme peace. I had zero doubt in my mind that I was saved, that I was protected, that whatever the Lord's plan was for my life, the Lord's plan was going to prevail. And so I got on my knees and I just said, Lord, if it's my time, I am ready to see. I'm ready to come home. And if it is my time, I want you to take me. And I don't want anybody to have any question that I'm home with you. But if it isn't, place your hand on me in the situation, right? And I remember I got in the ambulance. And what was funny is I wasn't listening to music on when I got in the accident, but there was a song that was stuck in my head from Rock City Church. Okay, sweet. So I wasn't listening to any music in the accident. It was just a complete freak accident, but there was a song that I had listened to. Like, if I find a song I like, I'll play it a million times till I get sick of it. And then I'll move on to the next. But there's a song by Rock City Worship, the church I go to here in town, called Praise the Lord. And one of the verses says, I won't let a rock cry out. I think we all know, like, when the whole thought process, the verse behind that. But I won't let a rock cry out. I got breath in my lungs. I got a reason to praise God. And it was crazy. After I got done praying, I prayed a prayer to the Lord when I was waiting for the ambulance, before I got in. The only thing going through my mind that whole time was, I won't let a rock cry out. And I was just singing it in my head over and over and over and over. Get in the ambulance. They pumped me full of fentanyl and ketamine to just put me down. And I remember sitting there still saying that song in my head. And the EMT guy, I don't know if they're allowed to do this, but I remember, if they should, I remember he went, patient's 50-50. He's severely critical. We don't know if he's going to make it. And I'm like fully conscious at this time. I'm like, the ketamine didn't put me down that much, right? And I turn around and I'm like, me? I'm like, Roen McCullough? I'm like, that I'm going to make this. I don't know what you're talking about. And it was just a little weird thing I remember. But I remember I got to the hospital, got in the trauma bay, they cut everything off. I had multiple emergency surgeries. I think I'm up to like 6 now. I have 2 more to go, where they're going to take a bone graft out of my rib and reconstruct all of this. I have so much titanium in my face now. My doctor's been phenomenal. I look like myself. That was the biggest concern. But I think the biggest thing I realized while I was in the hospital is I had over probably 300 people come see me. Over 300 people. My dad even said something about it. He was like, Rowan, as abrasive as you are as a person, and how opinionated as you are, I'm surprised that you have this many people that love you and care about you. I'm like, thanks for the backhanded comment, but I appreciate that. And so it really started to show me the relationships that I had built in the times of where I felt I had no one and nothing, to I have 300 people showing up at my hospital room. I had people worth nothing donating. I had people worth $500 million donating and showing up and dropping their life to come see me in the hospital room. And it was so profound. It was incredible. And I had my whole men's group came and showed up. And it was really one of those moments of, this is the payoff. This is everything I've been working for. I prayed for brotherhood when I had no one. I prayed for brotherhood this entire time, and I have it. And it was one of those, like, you know what? Losing an eye really isn't that bad. Like, does it suck? Yeah. Right. I don't think anybody would say, hey, with the GoFundMe money and everything, I don't think anybody would say, hey, I'll give you a $50,000 check if I can take your eye. I don't think anybody would take that. Right. Or I would at least hope not. It sucks. But it was one of those moments that just was so profound in my life that I just realized that everything that I've been working towards has paid off. And it's been a blessing. And I think if I was in the accident 3 years ago, I'd be angry at God and confused. I wouldn't know how to handle it. I wouldn't know why he was doing it in my life. I didn't know. And I said this on the Rubio podcast as well. I say the greatest form of love is sacrifice, obviously shown by Jesus dying on the cross, right? If I have to lose an eye to have just one conversation that strengthens somebody's faith or brings somebody to become a believer, I'm living a great life and I am beyond blessed. And if I have to sacrifice my eye for that, God can take my arm next week. I hope he doesn't. He can take my leg the week after. And it's just one of those, if I am willing to live with this, I've had over 150 conversations with people about my faith. I've been able to speak at Rock City. I've been able to come on to platforms like this and just talk. And it's been such a blessing. And now I have a lifelong conversation starter about my faith. And I think that's God did that for a reason. Obviously, God doesn't do things on accident, right? And now I have, every time somebody looks at me, every time somebody is like, I can tell when I'm talking to somebody when somebody's looking at my eye socket versus my actual eye. And I love to just make comments. I'll make a comment and start a conversation about it, right? It's because it's like addressing the elephant in the room, and it's a phenomenal segue into the faith, right? So it's been a journey, Greg. It's been a crazy journey, but it's been very fruitful as well.
Yeah. So multiple places within your talk, I wanted to just step in and ask questions, but I don't want to stop you because I know it messes everything up. But one of my first questions really is, back in high school, you talked about, you thought your identity, let's just say identity, your identity was in Christ. And It got shooken up a little bit, and you realized it wasn't as strong as maybe it was. But today, your identity is massively in him. I want to know, what did that transition look like for you in your faith?
It's hard. I mean, in high school, I did everything, right? I was in church every Sunday. I was praising. I wasn't listening to any secular music. I didn't cuss. I didn't do anything. No sex before marriage, nothing. I literally was, when you look at a cookie cutter Christian, right? You look at a cookie cutter Christian, that's what I was like. It was just, I was on such a straight and narrow path. And I think that's what I thought Christianity was, right? I thought Christianity was adhering to rules, and being a good person, right? And it's not. Sure, you should be a good person, right? And just in general, that comes along with it. But I had to look and make many realizations that, like, for example, sin isn't a set of rules that we are to follow or in avoid, right? Sin is God saying, hey, if you do this, it's going to lead to unfulfillment. If you do this, it is going to lead you away from me, and it is going to lead to pain and hurt. It's not Christians saying, hey, don't sin because it's bad and wrong. Don't sin because you're going to hurt yourself. And God doesn't want you to hurt, right? And so I think my faith before, I had such a naive perspective of the world, naive perspective of Christianity, and I didn't understand reality, right? And so now that I've gotten in the world, I've been of the world, and I've realized, like I've said, the world is not who I want to be or the men that I want to surround myself with, hence the men's group. Now I've realized all of the hardship in my life, everything that I've faced has been for a reason. Everything, and then there's certain people in life who don't face as much hardship, who don't, who stay in that kind of cookie cutter Christian phase, right? Which is completely fine because that appeals to certain people, right? For me, all of the hardship that I have faced has allowed me to relate to people and actually meet people where they are and address people's heart and be empathetic towards people. One thing that I struggle with even to this day, and I go back and forth, I've gotten a lot better, is empathy. I think empathy as men is the hardest thing for men to grasp. Empathy is the devil his grand scheme the thing he can do with a man is prevent him from showing love, hardening his heart to not be empathetic and not show love to others, right? I could look at my situation. I have every reason to have a hardened heart, every reason to have a hardened heart. And sometimes I do. And that's okay because that's shit that I'm processing through, right? But it's not okay to remain hardened, right? It's not okay to say, hey, I'm okay with where I'm at. Like I always say with my friends, it's okay to have a season of your life where you're a bad person, right? You're going through some stuff. You might treat people a little differently. That's okay. And you can show yourself some grace for that. It's not okay to remain a bad person, right? And so my faith journey has led me to the point where I have to show empathy for others far beyond any empathy that any empathy that I've given myself, any grace that I've given myself. I struggle with that. I don't show myself grace. If I do something wrong, I will sit there and be like, why did you do that? And not show myself any grace. But the biggest thing that I've learned is to have empathy for other people. And I guess that manifests in, like when I was in a relationship, if your girlfriend comes to you and is like, oh, I broke a nail, and you're sitting there and you're like, that's really what, and I'm sure you've dealt with this being a married man. They come to you and they're like, oh, my world's ending. I got this thing. And it's like the smallest little thing, but to them, it's not the smallest little thing. Right. And so being able to have that perspective, I always talk about perspective too, right? Forced perspective. God has forced me to have a new perspective on life. Right. And I don't know the verse very well, but there's a verse that talks about if your right eye causes you to sin, to carve it out, right? And I sit there, and the first thing that I was talking to one of my mentors about is he said, "Well, what eye did you lose?" And I was like, "My right eye." And he sent me that verse, and I was like, "You know what? You're not wrong." And it's not that I was necessarily like out living a sinful life, but I think what God has shown me, and this is the main conclusion that I'm drawing from this, what God has shown me is it's all about the position of your heart. My position of my heart, I was never outwardly a bad guy, right? I was never outwardly out doing dumb things, sinning outwardly that was just decimating people's lives and hurting people and all that. But God knows the potential that I have to impact other people. And he knew that my heart wasn't in that right position, right? There were certain things I exalted myself in. There were certain things that I thought to myself, I made myself this way. I did this for myself. I came from being homeless to now, having my dream job, right? And I still, honored him in that, but there was still a portion of me that was like, I did this to a certain extent. I did this. And that you can't have that. And what I've realized is there's a great podcast by Tim Keller that talks about being a slave to non-gods. I think it's literally called Slave to Non-Gods. And it talks about idolatry and anything that comes between. One of my mentors, John Watkins, he's a co-founder of Cohatch. Anything that comes between you and God, anything, God will not allow you to succeed in that. And he might allow you to have it. Like maybe that's money, maybe that's wealth, right? He might allow you to have that wealth. You're not going to be happy. He might allow you to have that 10 out of 10 girl that everybody wants and this, that, the other, that everyone idolizes and lusts after. You're not going to be happy. You're not going to be fulfilled. Anything that comes between you and God, God will not allow you to find peace in. And that has been, I think, in my faith journey, the biggest lesson that I've learned. Anything, whether that's football, whether that's work, whether that's money, whether that's my relationship, there's lust of the eyes, right? Like if I idolize marriage, if I idolize the success of my family, if I idolize, I want my parents to be happy, and I want their marriage to work well. God's going to take that out of my hands. It's not, he's never going to allow that to prosper. Right. So I think that's the biggest lesson that I've learned is putting God first and literally not allowing anything between my relationship with God.
Yeah. Do you feel like the removal of your eye repositioned your heart?
Absolutely. Absolutely. My heart wasn't that. So My heart was in the right place. And I think this is why this happened. God knew my heart was in the right place. And that's why he allowed the accident to happen. The second my heart became in the right place, he allowed the accident to happen. And I'm grateful for it. I tell people it's the best thing that's ever happened to me. You know, does it suck? Luckily, I'm left eye dominant, but does it suck living with one eye? Absolutely. There's hardships that, like, I don't have any depth perception. I reach for my water bottle just now and I miss it, right? I go to open a door handle, I miss the door handle. I don't know how Ohio's a one eyed state to drive. It sucks to drive, right? It's kind of scary, but uh, it does. I think he's given me now, it's like a solidification of my faith, right? Where I would have been angry at him before, I would have questioned him before, I would have thought, why are you doing this to me? But now that question has transformed to why me, from why me to why not me, right? And it's been a blessing. It has literally been the best thing that's ever happened to me in my entire life.
So, Rowan, you said that if the accident were to happen 3 years ago, you would have been mad at God and you would have had a totally different reaction. But your reaction, you described it perfectly. Your reaction, the day it happened, was totally different. So, between 3 years ago to the day the accident happened, what happened in you
Mhm.
that allowed you to have the response to the accident that you did?
Pain, pain and humility. Goes back to Matthew 20-12. Those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. In those 3 years, when God humbled me and I realized, I very quickly realized God's humbling me right now. I've been exalting this over him. I've been exalting myself over him. My heart's not been in the right place. And then he'd take it from me. And I'd think, okay, that's gone. I can focus more on God. But then there was something else in my life that I was exalting over him. And then he'd take that from me. And it went down this path of, he has been taking so much from me. I don't know what else he could take. I don't know what else he could take. He never took me to the point where it was irreparable, right? Like when I was homeless in my car, it wasn't homeless because I couldn't necessarily afford an apartment, but I was just trying to figure out, I'm not going to go get a 12-month lease if I don't have a job, right? I probably couldn't even, be approved for one, right? So it was never him humbling me to the point where everything in my life was taken from me and I couldn't repair myself. But it was humbling me where it was almost like hey buddy, fix this. And if you don't, it's going to keep happening. Keep it going. Come on. So I think the biggest lesson that I've learned, and the biggest thing that has changed is pain. My thing is mistakes and mentors. There's two ways to learn: mistakes or mentors. I had a lot of mentors, but I'm a stubborn man and I didn't listen a lot of the times. I feel very convicted. And this is my like new from the past 3 weeks on. I'm listening to every single one of my convictions that I have. Every single one of my convictions. If I feel, this is wrong, I feel like I shouldn't be doing this, I'm not going to do it. I feel like I should say this in this situation, I'm going to say it. I feel like I shouldn't say this in this situation, I'm not going to say it. And before, I've never not had conviction about things, but I've not always listened to it. And so now it's like God really bolstering, like, hey, do you want to be humbled or do you want to be exalted? Right? Like, let's get to it. So that's what's changed.
Yeah. Man, I tell you what, there's so much that you have in this, and I didn't realize how incredibly impactful. I knew it would be impactful, but I just had no idea how much you were going to bring today. And you have so much. So I have to go back because I think I met your mom back in 1989. My wife and I were trying to figure this out. We worked at a restaurant called Dalt's. It was in Worthington, which was one of the greatest restaurants known to man.
Yep.
And unfortunately, it's gone. There's one left in Nashville now, but it's not the same. So, what role? Because I mean, they had to have. Okay, what? Tell me the role that your mom and dad had in your spiritual journey as you grew up.
It's hard. It's a good one. Um, they put up guardrails. They said, you are going to be raised in a Christian church. They didn't allow us to go outside the Christian church, right? But our journey was our journey, right? They never, and this is one thing that, obviously within it, as a man, you have to be a spiritual and emotional and physical provider, and a spiritual, emotional, and physical protector. My dad wasn't that fully, right? My mom was she kind of took the backseat a lot in the faith, but every time I would come to talk to her about stuff, she'd talk to me, right? But there was no one that was really driving my faith journey, right? They put up the boundaries and they said, hey, we're going to be in a Christian household. This is the right way, but go learn and go figure it out, right? And one thing I respect the most about my parents, they were very strict, very strict. They allowed us to fail, but they always caught us if we failed too far, right? And I think in today's world where parents fail, is you either are over nurturing and over keeping them in a bubble. You keep them in a bubble too much. My parents allowed us to go experience and get hurt by things and come back and say, hey, that really hurt. And they go, well, why do you think that is? Right? But if there was something that was going to send us off the deep end, they wouldn't let us do it. And I think that as a parent, it played across every single one of our verticals of our life. Spiritually, though, I don't think I had a ton of direction from them, but it was them saying, hey, Christianity's the way, go figure it out. Your journey is your journey. Your relationship with God is your relationship with God. Our faith as parents is not going to save you. It's not going to put you in heaven. Right? And that's, I look back on it because I look at how I'm going to raise my kids. And I sit there and I'm like, well, I don't want them going to this school. I don't want them learning about this. I don't want them. And there's like, you can get so granular and so controlling over all these little things. Right? But they weren't. And I turned out okay. Right? And there's a lot of pain and hardship with that, but that's how people are going to learn. And I think that's the role my parents played in my spiritual journey as a whole. Yeah.
Right on. What's your relationship, you and Liam? You guys really, really close, or where are you guys at?
No, we had a falling out. So I'll just give a little backstory on the relationship. So Liam and I have always been in competition with one another, unspoken competition, which is good. I love competitions. It's healthy between brothers, right? I think Liam remains in the when I was in my faith infancy, when I was saying I had not been through my faith infancy, when I had not been through the hardships of life, right? And I just thought, hey, this is what Christianity is. Right. I think Liam has remained in that because he has been blessed beyond belief in his life with a beautiful wife, a loving relationship. He's been incredibly gifted at football. He's obviously very successful. And there just hasn't been the same level of hardship, which I'm happy for him, right? Like I'm glad that he hasn't faced the hardships that I have faced. I don't want people to have to go through all the hardships that I faced, right? I wouldn't wish that on anybody else, but that goes back to the why not me comment, right? And so I think there's a large discrepancy between him and I of understanding the reality of the world, right? Like his reality is what he thinks it is, right? My reality is what I know it is, right? And I love him. I care about him. I'll always be there for him. It's just there's a big discrepancy between that. And then you pair in, just competition, you pair in emotions, you pair in family dynamics and just disagreements because, with how, families have been structured, I'm very opinionated on it because I've done a lot of deep diving research and finding out, like what does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to have a family? What does it mean for the husband to have a role, the wife to have a role, the children to have a role? And what does all of that mean? And I think in my time, I've had time to process. I've had time to work through. I've had all the time in the world, it's what I've devoted my life to is taking the time to process all these things and understand all these things and understand how my parents fit together, how they've played their life, the role of my dad into my life and my relationship with my dad, and how it shaped me as a man, and my insecurities and my fears, and how my fears drive my behaviors, and how my behaviors, result in positive or negative outcomes, and my how my fears drive self-limiting beliefs, and all of those things, right? And I think when you are so blessed in a way that you don't face all those hardships, there's no it's like physics, right? Like if there's a cup on the table, unless there's a opposing force that is greater than that cup, there's no reason for that cup to move, right? I have had many forces in my life that have pushed me to move, right? I don't think the same thing as him, which is okay. Like I said earlier in the podcast, there is a need for those people. There is a need for people like me and the things that I've been through. And that doesn't make one better or worse or right or wrong, just different perspectives on life and different realities that you face. And so I think there's just been a strained relationship for the past probably 10, 12, 15 years, which is, it is what it is. But love him to death. Correct. Yep. Yep. He's- yep. No, no, I wouldn't. I would stay in the infancy stage. I think God knew that I needed to face the hardship to get to where I want. And to be honest, I would not change. If someone from the outside world would look at my life, the house that I live in, the car that I drive versus the house he lives in, the car he drives, and look at my life versus his life and go, his life is the one that I want from a secular perspective. Absolutely. He's got everything, right? I wouldn't change where I'm at. I would not take any of what he has to replace it with anything that I've built. Mhm. Absolutely. Lukewarm. I think we're facing distractions, idolatry. I mean, there's been such, I mean, this is a rabbit hole. This is a rabbit hole to go down. Weak men, I think, is the biggest thing. If you look at popular culture, you look at transgenderism, you look at, it's the gradually and then suddenly approach, right? You legalizing gay marriage to, this is just one topic, for example, legalizing gay marriage to the foot in the door, right? And now it's drag shows in schools, right? You look at that and that domino effect across the board, and amongst social issues, economic issues. There's an underlying factor in all of this, and it's weak men who are afraid to stand up and say this is right, this is wrong, because they're afraid of the feedback that they will get from the world. And that's not okay. I have told myself ever since I was a kid, if something is wrong, I'm going to address it. I don't care what that does or positions me. One of the reasons I left JP Morgan, they had a trans ally training. I walked in, I said, it was like mandatory. And I said, is this something we have to do? And she said, yeah, absolutely. Let's go back and talk about it. And I said, you know what? Can I talk to you in your office for a minute? I left. I said, I'm not doing this. Absolutely not. I don't believe in that. That's not the life that I want to live. I don't care if that takes my secular, my wealth level down. I'll figure it out. God's got me, right? But weak men have allowed, it's the saying of strong men create good times create weak men create hard times create strong men, right? We are living in a world of perpetually weak men and perpetually hard times. And there's no intrinsic motivation to be better. There's no intrinsic motivation to stand up. And I think we've seen that. I'm not a big politics guy. I don't, whatever people say about Trump is whatever. But he was the first man when he came into office and said, hey, two genders, two, that's it, period. You need men like that to stand up. Everything else, is up for debate. But that directly, you need men who are willing to say, this is right, This is wrong, and here's why. Right? Yep. Show yourself some grace and be patient. One of the biggest things that I struggled with, and I still to this day, is patience. I have never been a patient person. I'm always like, okay, what's the issue? Let's find the solution. What's the issue? Let's find the solution. It's not how life works. And in 90% of life, yeah, absolutely. But I think I've always been so solutions focused, so value focused, that a lot of the times the emphasis on empathy and addressing the heart before addressing the problem has gotten me in horrible situations with myself, with relationships, with friends, family. And I've gotten, it's more so intrinsically than it is extrinsically. But you look at the shortest verse in the Bible is Jesus wept, right? What's the context around that? It's when he went and he sat with Lazarus's family and wept with them before he raised Lazarus from the dead, right? He knew he was going to raise Lazarus from the dead. He is Jesus. He can do that, right? But he didn't just go, "Hey, Lazarus, wake up, buddy. Family, why are you crying?" Right? He said, "Hey, family, know that I love you. I care about you. I'm meeting you where you are, and I hear your heart." Right? Oh, and by the way, Lazarus is alive, right? Moral of that is you always have to address the heart before you address the problem. I think as men too, it goes back to empathy. We are not empathetic beings. And we're not innate empathetic beings. We are solution finders. We are logical. We are not emotional, right? And this is where we struggle in marriages a lot of the times. This is where we struggle with ourselves. You have to show yourself some grace and address your heart before you address anything, right? And if I'm sitting here and I'm saying from the accident, for example, I could sit there and 2 days after the accident, I was sending emails, right? Why? Because we had $5 million to raise. My managing partner said, "Stop sending emails." And for me, it was I had to get my mind off of it. But I took a step back and I look at that now and I'm like, I was just sweeping everything under the rug. Everything in my life I was sweeping under the rug. And I never took time to actually show myself some grace and say, you know what, Rowan, this is hard. And it's okay that it's hard, but it's hard. And you can show yourself, you can allow yourself a day to sit there and go, this sucks. I don't like this. And I need to show myself some grace. I don't have to add value directly in this moment. I can be a little selfish here and say, hey, everybody, can I have a second to process? Right. And I think that's what I would tell my high school self is to show yourself some grace, have some patience, and address your heart and others' hearts before you address any problem.
Yeah. Now, I know you've done some speaking. You've been asked to speak in a variety of different ways. I know one-on-one, groups, stuff like that. But, I look at the youth today and a lot of the youth, let's just say high school, let's just do that. High school, which you're not too far away from. I mean, I'm much further, but I'm saying, that high school group, if you were speaking to a high school graduation, let's say it was Kilbourne, or let's say it was even Ohio State graduation. Let's say it was somewhere in there, and these kids are getting ready to go into college or they're getting ready to go into life. What would be your 3 or 4 points that you would want to make sure you conveyed in that talk?
That's good. I've never thought about that. I've never been asked that question before. I think it would be very similar to what I would tell myself. Everybody going into college, I've never understood hey, in high school, you got to know what you got to do with your life, what you want to do with your life. I had no clue. Show yourself some grace, address your heart, right? Because that's the most important thing. Don't allow secular perspectives of what the world values to determine what you should value, right? I think that's what drives a lot of people. Do I love money? Absolutely, I love money. I love God more. God's going to provide the money, right? If I am obedient to God, God will bless my life however he sees fit, whether that be money, a phenomenal family, kids, whatever that might be, right? But addressing high schoolers, I would say, show yourself some grace, show yourself some patience, address your heart, and listen to understand your value set and what you choose to align with, and allow that to drive your life rather than letting the world define that for you. Yeah.
Very powerful. No, I love it.
Yeah.
So I know you're not going to pick the Lord, you're not going to pick Jesus, and you can't pick the Holy Spirit. But who's your favorite character and why in the Bible? I mean, I'm not trying to ask a little Sunday school question. I mean, you've thought about this. So who do you relate to the most?
Mm. I wrestle with this. David, I like David a lot. I think I always say Samson because he was the strongest and they blinded him. I love Samson. I think Samson's a great character in the Bible. I'd say David though, King David. He God God wanted to deem him king, so he sent him Goliath, right? There were so many King David was sitting on what is it? Psalm 143, I think it is. And I think it's Psalm 143 that talks about it's David's prayer to. There's zero context to this, and I think I let me try to pull it up really quick. Psalm 143. Yep, I'm going to read this. Psalm 143. So the background to this is there is no context. This is David purely praying raw to Jesus or to God. He's purely praying raw to God, and he's basically saying, "Hey, I am King David. I'm King David. I am the conqueror of nations. I am the defeater of Goliath. I am King David, right?" And he still looked at God raw and said, "Lord, hear my prayer. Listen to my cry for mercy. In your faithfulness and righteousness, come to my relief. Do not bring your servant into judgment, for no one living is righteous before you. The enemy pursues me. He crushes me to the ground. He makes me dwell in the darkness like those long dead. So my spirit grows faint within me. My heart within me is dismayed. I remember the days of long ago. I meditate on all of your works and consider what your hands have done. I spread out my hands to you. I thirst for you like a parched land. Answer me quickly, Lord. My spirit fails. Do not hide your face from me, or I will be like those who go down to the pit. Let the morning bring me word of your unfailing love, for I have put my trust in you. Show me the way I should go, for to you I entrust my life. Rescue me from my enemies, Lord, for I hide myself in you." And there's no context to this in the Bible. It is David purely looking at God and saying, "God, I am King David. Okay. You have bestowed upon me such responsibility, such authority. I am hurting. I am knocked to my knees. I have nowhere to go other than to come to you." Right? Everybody knows the story of David and Goliath, right? Not many people know Psalm 143. This is a prayer that I have prayed numerous times in the past 5 years of my life. On my knees, crying, sitting there and going, "Lord, I have no clue what to do in my life. All I know is I need your help. All I know is I need your help. I know I am bestowed with great responsibility. You have entrusted me with many gifts of the Spirit. You have entrusted me with such a great platform and ability to minister and speak to others. But I need your help." And I think that's where King David and I resonate with each other.
He's a powerful one. I mean, I watched I think it's just called King David. It's a series that's on one of the Netflix kind of places. I don't remember, but we watched the whole thing, and they did a great job. I feel like, a lot, every show's got their own little thing, but I mean, it's they did a terrific job just adding some visual to his background. I think it was fantastic. So, well, Rowan, I just want to thank you. I want to thank you so very much for today. I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for doing this. I want to thank you for your example. I want to thank you for your attitude, and I mean, I walk away just feeling so great just listening to you, because I can't imagine what your study is like with you as just a part of it. Yeah, you lead it, but it's made up of people like you who are transparent. It's like, man, that we need more of that. We need so much, because when you talked about that men's group that you went to and how you how they responded to you, I know exactly how you feel. So it's like, just great job following the Holy Spirit and doing what he's asking you to do.
Listen, it's not me, it's the Lord. God has put it on my heart. I'm just a servant listening to my convictions.
I know.
That's all I can do.
I know.
That's all I can do.
I know, but
I
man, you're
appreciate
doing
you
it,
saying
and
that.
I'm
Yeah.
glad, and I'm
Thank
so
you, God.
thankful for you.